Today I'm coming to you from California's Central Valley, somewhere near Fresno, and I'm taking a look at the 2021 F-250 Tremor. This is one of my favorite 3/4 ton trucks because the Tremor package gives you extra off-road capability without sacrificing the payload and towing ability that is inherent in the F-250. So this is quite different than the RAM Power Wagon. The Power Wagon sacrifices a great deal of 3/4 ton payload capability to give you more off-road capability. Now, this is not the same kind of off-road vehicle that we see in the Power Wagon. Instead, this is, I think, a better balanced 3/4 ton truck, because if I open this door right here, we get, let's take a peek here, 2,844 pounds of payload capability in this F-250 Tremor. That is nearly 2,000 pounds more than you'll find in a RAM Power Wagon. Interesting bit of trivia, the RAM 2500 Power Wagon, even though it's a 3/4 ton truck, actually may have less payload ability than a RAM 1500 Rebel. Now you might be wondering why I'm out here with an F-250 with this wide load label right there on the front. That's because I needed to transport a few water tanks for home. I'm adding an extra 20,000 gallons of water storage capability for firefighting, so I had to get 4 of these tanks home. I have 2 currently on the trailer right here. Now these tanks are not terribly heavy. They only weigh about 800 pounds each, but they are a little bit large in diameter. These are over the size that you can legally carry without a wide load permit, which I do have for this video. Why am I not towing the tanks today with my Dodge Durango that I have towed tanks with before? Well, I actually just noticed a little trick in California's wide load law that says any kind of permit load like this, over length, over height, or over weight, must be towed with a tow vehicle that weighs at least 6,500 pounds in curb weight. So that's this F-250 right here. This video is going to be a little bit shorter than normal. I'm mainly going to be talking about the things that I like and don't like about this particular F-250. Nice touch here, we have blind spot monitoring, and it is trailer adaptive, although if you're towing a load this wide, then obviously that trailer blind spot monitoring system doesn't work so well. There's Tremor badging on the bed, and then we have all-terrain tires that are definitely still designed for the high payload capability that we find in this truck. Again, nearly 3,000 pounds of payload, so this particular combination is not a problem. The trailer weighs about 3,500 pounds or so, and then there's about 1,600 pounds of weight on it. But the big deal here, of course, for towing is the frontal area there. You can see those tanks are very, very large. Those tanks are about 11 feet in diameter, so that's why you need the wide load permit. As you can see, this is the 4-door model. It's a Lariat trim, and under the hood we have the new 7.3 liter V8. Before we get out on the road, let's take a quick look around the interior. Since it's road trip time, I have a ton of different stuff in here, camera bags, tools, a jack there just in case. I love the fact that there are tons of extra cup holders in here so I can use it for trash, things like that. We have the dual cup holder set up over there on that side, and then you can slide this divider over here to the side, so that way you could put things like larger Snapple bottles right like that in those areas. 2 USB ports right there, Qi wireless charging mat, dual zone climate control. The controls for the 4-wheel drive system are right over here. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto integrated into the dashboard right there, which is a nice touch. I also really appreciate these power extending mirrors. If you've ever wondered why large pickup trucks have these power extending mirrors, or those large ones that fold over to the side, it's that way you can get a better view around if you have a wider load like the one that's on here. The instrument cluster in here is a partial LCD design. It gives us a lot of information, definitely trip computer information, off-road information. This is where you would add a trailer to the system, check the trailer light setup, etc. We have an off-road information screen, and then settings that mainly have to do with the driver information systems, as well as the active safety systems on the car. One of the big advantages for the Ford, Chevy, and GMC pickup trucks is the 10-speed automatic transmission that both of these trucks have. And Ford uses it in the big V8 engine, and of course, the diesel as well. Ram, on the other hand, uses an 8-speed automatic transmission with a 6.4-liter V8 engine and a 6-speed automatic transmission, actually 2 different 6-speed autos if you get the Cummins turbo diesel in that truck. An interesting twist with that setup in the Ram truck line is that if you get the Ram 2500, the corollary to the model that I'm driving right here, then you cannot get the high output version of the diesel because the 6-speed automatic transmission in the 2500 cannot handle that much oomph. And then there's the fact that you can get the diesel engine with the Tremor package, and you cannot get the Cummins turbo diesel in the Ram 2500 Power Wagon. That mainly has to do with the front-end design of the Ram 2500 and packaging of the winch and some of the other cooling details that they were worried about in the front of that more off-road oriented Ram 2500. Now I'm going to run through a number of questions that a bunch of you had over at facebook.com/AlexNautos. One of them was, why do we see different engines and different engine tunes in pickup trucks? Why don't they just use some of the powerful passenger car engines? A lot of it doesn't necessarily have to do with reliability or durability per se. Instead, a lot of it has to do with the way the power is being delivered. So this 7.3-liter gasoline V8 engine, obviously this is an enormous V8 for the 21st century, but it has an awful lot of low-end torque, and that means that even as I'm climbing up this hill gradually here, I'm able to stay at my set speed on the cruise control with the engine loafing at around 1600 RPM and that massive amount of frontal area behind me. This towing load is definitely not aerodynamic, and that's really obvious when you take a look at my fuel economy numbers. Going down, in order to pick up the tanks with the trailer empty, I averaged about 14.5 mpg. Going back, I'm averaging 8 to 9 mpg due to the massive amount of drag that we have from those tanks. Thanks to the large amount of torque that we get from this engine, the transmission has been able to spend most of its time in 10th gear. If you tow a lot, this 10-speed automatic transmission, or honestly the 10-speed automatic that we find in GM's truck lineup, is really going to be an asset, because this transmission always has the right gear ratio for you. It's especially important if you plan on getting the turbo diesel engine, because those have relatively narrow power bands. They don't rev terribly high. Most of the horsepower and torque is happening right in the middle over the course of a few thousand RPM. And this 10-speed automatic transmission means that the transmission can keep the engine in its power band for longer. And of course, with this gasoline engine, it means that it's going to be more efficient, especially when hill climbing. The transmission is also going to give you much better control over engine braking. Because the gear ratios are all closer together, it's much more likely you're going to find an appropriate gear ratio to keep your speed in check as you're going back down the hill. But I've digressed a little bit from that question. A good example of performance engine versus truck-tuned engine is the 6.4-liter engine we find in the Ram truck lineup, specifically the Ram 2500 and 3500. The SRT engine is going to need to rev higher and use lower gears to climb a hill when you have a load on the back, and we don't see that in the truck version of that 6.4-liter V8. The second question relates to the load that I'm carrying. These are water tanks for my home water system. As you've no doubt noticed, I live in a forest. Forests occasionally catch on fire, and therefore we decided last year to add some additional water storage capability for firefighting fire hydrants, pressurized hydrants, and of course draft hydrants for the fire department as well. So we're bumping up our water storage capacity by 45,000 gallons, and that involves a bunch of these 5,000 gallon tanks. As to why I'm towing the water tanks myself, the easy answer there is I'm simply cheap, and the shipping company wanted about $1,500 in order to ship the tanks. Getting a wide load permit in California was only $16, so obviously that's the option that I chose. Now, a little bit more detail on that wide load permit. Technically, anybody can get one as long as you're not towing weights that require a different class of license. In California, you can tow a wide load with a regular license as long as you have the right equipment. Overweight is a different matter. Overweight, you are going to need a different license category. The last question that a lot of you asked was simply for unvarnished opinions on the Super Duty lineup of trucks and how it compares to the competition. If I were shopping for a 3/4 ton or 1 ton truck in the US right now, for me at least, it would be between the GMC Sierra and the Ford lineup of trucks. There are a few reasons for that. The first one is that I think the Silverado is not exactly attractive on the outside. I just don't care for the front end design. And mechanically, the GMC Sierra is identical. There's nothing wrong with the mechanics of the vehicle. So if you like the look of the Silverado, then it's going to be just fine. But for me, I don't like the front end look of the Silverado. Now, we don't know whether the new Silverado heavy duty lineup of trucks is going to get the refreshed interior that we see in the half-ton Silverado for 2022. I wouldn't be surprised if it did, but of course General Motors has not confirmed anything yet. We also do not know if the GMC Sierra is going to be getting that refreshed interior. Although the infotainment screen inside this pickup truck isn't exactly large, I think that the rest of the interior in the Super Duty is a little bit more attractive than the interior that we find in GM's pickup trucks at the moment. When it comes to towing capability, there really isn't that much difference between the Ford and the GM trucks, and that has more to do with licensing realities than actual vehicle capability. Because for many folks in America, you're going to need a Class A license in order to tow the maximum loads that you supposedly can tow in the GM or in the Ford trucks, and most folks out there don't have a Class A. Now, when it comes to hauling, things are going to be a little bit different, because generally speaking, the Ford trucks are going to give you higher payload capabilities when comparably equipped to those GM trucks. So if payload is what you're interested in, you might want to take a look at the Ford lineup. That just has to do with the design of the pickup trucks and a lot of the engineering decisions that Ford made when designing this line. And that's especially true for off-road trims like the Tremor trim that I'm driving here. This definitely does not give up much payload capability in order to get the off-road bits that the Tremor trim has, and we do see something a little bit different in some of the competition. Logically, due to the size of this truck, I don't see too many people taking this on narrow off-road trails, but if you live in a more rural area, if you live on a farm or a ranch and you want something that's a little bit more capable, has a locking differential, more aggressive off-road sort of tires, this is going to be an excellent option.